Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. As we focus on the disaster response plan, what concerns should be taken into consideration when focusing on the elderly during a disaster? My name is Michelle Steen, and I'm a registered nurse working with the elderly and disadvantaged homebound population in Bay County, Florida. I have seen firsthand how disaster affects our elderly population. Today's presentation will focus on the unique concerns and needs of elderly during disasters. Let's explore how disasters may affect our elderly population. In 2009, the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure held a special hearing before the Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management entitled Looking Out for the Very Young, the Elderly, and Others with Special Needs Lessons Learned from Katrina and Related Disasters. Two speakers, John Vaughn, chair of the National Council on Disability, and Trevor Riggin for the American Red Cross, spoke before the committee. Vaughn pointed out four concerns. One, people with disabilities are routinely excluded from local drills, preparedness exercises, and other planning processes. Two, one study noted that of 30 disaster sites, only 27% of the emergency managers had taken advantage of and completed available training on disabilities. Three, people with disabilities remain largely forgotten during the disaster response phase. Why are the elderly and disabled often forgotten? Some things to consider that the elderly may have cognitive deficits, vision deficits, hearing deficits, and therefore might not be able to communicate their needs or respond to traditional communication during the disaster response phase. Also, if traditional communication systems are down, the elderly might not have advanced technology such as cell phones to be able to utilize text messaging. And four, emergency warnings for people with disabilities is woefully inadequate. Most disaster warnings are only handled through conventional communication system, which is usually inaccessible to people with cognitive, hearing, and vision disabilities. Trevor Riggin expressed the following concern. One example of this is the proper resourcing of our shelters. Based on the analysis of critical barriers, we have strategically stockpiled key resources to increase accessibility and provide critical durable medical equipment to our clients. This includes items such as transferable cots, adaptive equipment for showers and toilets, and essential communications equipment. The elderly are typically defined as a person who is 65 years of age or greater. However, there are many distinctions between the elderly based upon age, continuum, and their physical ability. The young old are between 65 to 74 years of age. The aged are between 75 to 84 years of age, and the oldest age is 85 years old or older. Fernandez et al. Described it's not age that makes a person vulnerable, but rather the correlation between advancing age and the likelihood of having special needs or disability, such as activities of daily living, dressing, bathing, eating, getting in and out of the bed, using the restroom, and mobility around the home, and instrumental activities of daily living, such as meal prep, managing money, using the telephone, taking medications correctly, traveling outside the home. The Census Bureau projects that by 2034, adults age 65 and older will outnumber those under the age of 18, which will be a first in U.S. history, which brings about another consideration for disaster preparedness for the elderly. As planning typically focuses on nursing homes and assisted living facilities, however, only 2.3 and 1.5% of such adults live in such facilities. An increase in our community education for community dwelling elders is needed. With the greatest number of deaths from extreme weather events and disasters, the elderly pose the greatest risk, and therefore the elderly living in the community should have an increased focus on mitigation, response, recovery, and preparedness for disaster. As many elderly persons will remain in the community during a disaster, emergency management personnel must consider this vulnerable population in the disaster plan and strategies to reduce the risks to the elderly. More information from this presentation can be found from the following resources. Thank you, and I hope you find this presentation helpful as you consider the elderly in your emergency management planning.